Good morning. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I'm Don Irvine, once again with you. All right. So, plenty of news here, I guess, or at least some news. It's Monday, December 14th. And why is this consequential? Because it is consequential every 4 years in terms of being the second Monday in December. And that is that it is time, it is the day that the electors will go and cast their votes for president as per the election that kind of ended on November 3rd, and for president. So we will see what happens here, but the expectation will be is that the result will be 306 for Biden, 232 for President Trump. President Trump had said several weeks ago that if the Electoral College did vote for Joe Biden, he would concede. However, he did do an interview with Fox and Friends, Fox News's Brian Kilmeade, and he was asked about that, and he said they're still fighting. They still have a long wait. They still have a way to go. He was even asked if he would attend the inauguration. He said he wasn't going to talk about that. So, it looks like that even if the vote is, once the decision is announced today, and then it'll be, I think, certified on January 5th or thereabouts, that President Trump is still going to fight. Now, what he has left to fight with is questionable at best. It depends upon which side of the fence you're on and how hardcore you are with this. There's no doubt that the very base of the Trump fanatics, the Trumpsters, they are fighting tooth and nail. They believe that this is a stolen election, that this is a rigged election. President Trump keeps bringing that up. However, the evidence really doesn't prove this out very well. And, the Supreme Court late on Friday, rejected the Trump team and their attempt. Well, I guess let's put it this way: it wasn't really them. It was Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, joined by a bunch of others, 17, 18 other state attorneys general, to try to basically overturn the vote. And by talking about trying to get into the weeds here about how the electors were chosen and the votes were cast in those states and how it would affect their states. Just not enough there, okay? So, so this is a big deadline. We're 22 days away or thereabouts from the final. But these decisions really have to be done by today, okay? President Trump can talk all he wants. All of supporters can talk all they want. You can say stolen election. You can say rigged election, whatever. But let's be real here. It's over, and it has been over. But President Trump will be leaving office on January 20th. He may not be at the inauguration on January 20th for Joe Biden, but it's done, and it's time to now look at at the Biden presidency. I've said this many times. This is not my favorite subject, not the favorite thing I want to be uttering out of my mouth. But I am not going to go down the rabbit holes of the conspiracy theorists. That doesn't make any sense. We have to kind of look at this and say, what can we do to regroup and move forward? Republicans, did fairly well. Otherwise, down ballot. There's the Georgia Senate runoff race. And that is probably the bigger key now than anything else. The Republicans must win a minimum of one of those seats, preferably win two, but they must win one of the two seats at stake to maintain control of the Senate, and therefore create, at least for the next 2 years, some kind of wall against what the House will be passing legislatively for Joe Biden, trying to get their radical agenda through. And setting up that wall that will prevent some of the more radical policies from actually being written into law. That doesn't stop Joe Biden from making executive orders about certain things. He has the ability to do that. He can't do that on spending bills and things like that, but he can do this with a lot of other things. I expect that he will reverse a lot of the Trump era Trump's executive orders, just like Trump reversed the Obama orders. This is a political, move that happens every time the presidencies change. So nothing new there. Kamala Harris tweeted about how in 39 days, They will be, rejoining the Paris Climate Accord. You know, great for the left and the environmentalists, not great for America overall. President Trump, had the U.S. leave that, and we haven't been hurt by that, right? So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Type of a thing like that. But this is where they believe that you have to be a part of this climate accord to fight climate change and global warming, though they can't really prove all the damage or what ostensibly is damage from global warming and climate change. The world has been changing anyway, right? Not just because of weather, climate. That's variable no matter where you are, what you are, but the pandemic has created a different set of rules and norms where people are not traveling as much. The so-called quote carbon footprint is much lower than it used to be, and I'm not sure that people will pick up the driving and the traveling in 2021. Maybe we'll start to see something in 2022. I don't know for sure, but that's just kind of my thoughts about that. Vaccines. Hey, the vaccines are rolling out. There are pictures everywhere, video footage of the vaccines being loaded onto planes using dry ice as to keep the temperatures where they need to be, and they will start, reaching their destinations and then getting out to healthcare workers, people in nursing homes, places that need to get it, ASAP. That in of itself will be a confidence boost for people to be able to return to work. If their offices request it, maybe then these liberal politicians that have shut down a lot of their own states will say that we can do this. This is one of the greatest travesties of the pandemic of COVID-19, is how the politicians, the governors, and then the other state officials in various states have acted on this. It's one thing when you're not sure what's going on back in the spring to close things down, to kind of get a gauge of it, to try to stop the spread of the virus. But now there's no doubt that you are absolutely positively penalizing businesses by shutting them down, by basically saying you can only do carry out and curbside delivery, or you have 25% capacity in your restaurant and you can only have so many people in a store, where the contact, where all the studies using contact tracing and everything else shows that, the positivity rate, transmission rate in there is really, really low, like below 2%, maybe 1.5%, depending upon the region you're in. It's bigger gatherings that are the problem. It's people who aren't wearing masks in the bigger gatherings that tend to be the problem. Not a bunch of random people spread out throughout a store or throughout a restaurant. I mean, have you been to a restaurant, a dining establishment, lately? I mean, before even these new restrictions, as they were peeling them back, you sit in a restaurant, sometimes you are the only person sitting in the restaurant, or you're one of two parties sitting far apart. I mean, this is not like the restaurants are being crowded. Give them even if they were allowed to hit 100% capacity, I don't think a lot of people would return. So I think if they can go to 50, 75% capacity, they have a shot at surviving to a certain extent. But businesses are being ruined. And they're, in the meantime, the tax base is going right down the toilet. But what are these governors they're looking for? They're figuring out that the government will come through with either another kind of a PPP program and extra money to bail them out, to help cover their losses from the tax revenues that they're not getting from employment, and business and sales taxes. And that's not the government's job, is to bail the states out for that type of thing. They need to get their fiscal house in order and figure out what the new normal is for them, even though I hate to say the new normal, for them under the pandemic type situations, and how they can get back to where they need to be. Will this be a good idea to rein in government spending? Heck yeah, no doubt about it. What are they doing spending a lot of money anyway? So, and then we've got, speaking of this, so we've got a couple of, now the $908 billion COVID bill, bipartisan bill, is now proposed to be broken up into $160 billion and $748 billion to break up, say, the protections for the businesses and the bailout for the states versus the PPP program and other things like that. So two different types of things like that. Interesting idea. I mean, what they've done here is that they still have the liability shield for businesses tied to state aid. Once again, like I just said, I don't like the state aid, but if the price of that for right now, at least short term, is shielding businesses from potential COVID lawsuits, when they've taken every precaution that they could, but people want to sue them for blaming them for catching COVID because their establishment or their workplace didn't take enough precautions. Remember, you can sue at the drop of a hat for the most part. Doesn't mean your suit's going to go anywhere necessarily, but you can cost the other side time and money and a lot of aggravation in the meantime. And this is a way to create, just to shield them and say, look, don't even think about suing these companies, these schools, for COVID. If you want to get back to any semblance of what it used to be, you can't go around suing people, and so they need some kind of protection. It's really kind of a shame that we actually have to even put this into legislation of any kind, but that is the kind of society we have become over time, unfortunately. Cleveland Indians baseball. All right, after 105 years, they're going to drop the Cleveland Indians baseball name after the season. Does that mean they're going to become the Cleveland baseball team for a year after that while they sort it out? Or are they just going to use the Indians name this year, I guess, and then sort it out and have a new name in 2022? I don't know, but this is ludicrous, right? So we have the Washington football team, which is really the Redskins, and that's what I'll call them as. That's the last time I'm going to refer to them as WFB. It's now the Redskins, people. That's who they are, right? Cleveland Indians will always be the Cleveland Indians. If pressure comes and they try to change Atlanta Braves or the Kansas City Chiefs, they're still going to be the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Atlanta Braves to me. This politically correct nonsense has just really got to stop. But once again, our society is not that way anymore. There doesn't seem to be enough people standing up to do this. And so the brass, the ownership on the Cleveland Indians is now giving way. Shame on Daniel Snyder for giving in and, changing the name WFB. And it's like, really? The Washington football team? I mean, this is just absolutely ludicrous. I know there's sports writers out there who are supporting this change. I know there are a lot of other people supporting this change. I just think this is absolute nonsense. I don't see any of these names being offensive. They were never meant to be offensive when these names were adopted. They were actually meant to bring attention to these groups more than anything else. Could they have done a better job with some of the logos? In retrospect, maybe. I don't know. I never really paid that much attention to the Indians logo or anything like that, or type of thing. So it's I don't know. I mean, maybe it's because I'm half Asian. I really don't care, about what a team name is like this. But I'm not. If there was some supposed Asian slur, I wouldn't get. It would take a lot to get me upset about that. I've lived through a lot of stuff. I'm an older guy now. Believe me, people were pretty mean to me when I was a kid, with the Asian stuff. They thought I was a different kind of Asian too. So, they called me things that I wasn't. But that's the ignorance of the masses of people. And then we have this last thing too here, which is this case of this family from Colorado who was taking a flight, and they were kicked off their flight because their 2-year-old wouldn't wear the mask. The husband said he was going to hold the mask over the child's face, but apparently that wasn't good enough, and they were removed. That is the rule. The airline rule is 2 years, and above. The airlines gave them a mask because they didn't have one. The flight attendant had asked when they boarded the plane how old the child was. They said 2. So they gave them a mask. And here's the thing. Okay, I understand the rule. Okay, I understand. I mean, that 2 and above should wear a mask. I mean, I still think it's a little bit, 2 and above. I mean, it's like, what are the odds a 2-year-old is going to either catch it or give it? Pretty slim. But there's some you have to. There is a rule at some point. Maybe it should have been 5 and up, or something like that. Probably would have been a little bit better. But anyway, there was this there was this rules set forth, and I guess it came out of the CDC recommendations or guidelines. But here's the thing, all right? They're 2 years old. You know, is a 2-year-old always going to cooperate with you? You remember this thing called the terrible twos? Yeah, hello. You cannot always control your 2-year-old. How many times have you been on a plane with some pretty, rowdy little children that just drive you crazy, right? There's not a lot you can do about that, and there are a lot of parents who are embarrassed sometimes by the way their children behave on a plane. But you're in this aluminum can, and there's not a lot you can do about it during that flight. You try your best and you do your best. But if the mask was upsetting the child, the flight attendant, no leeway. I just don't understand why they couldn't give them a little bit of leeway and say, look, if the father was willing to hold the mask over the child's mouth for most of the flight, shouldn't that suffice at that point in time? Have you ever been the parent of a 2-year-old? Think about it. Can you imagine, if for me, I can't even imagine trying to hold a mask or put a mask on my 2-year-old children at the time when they're flying. That just seems that I don't think that would have worked very well. And for those that are parents now, I sympathize with you, right? I empathize that this is tough, and I think the airline, they need to do something about this. I think that treatment was awfully harsh for what the violation was. But once again, that's what's happening in this crazy, crazy world. All right, so we're down to the last 17 days of the year. We've got 11 days before Christmas. Hopefully we can go out with a big bang and some celebrations. It's been a pretty tough year for a lot of people. But anyway, as always, as I sign off here today, please stay safe, stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America. And I will see you again probably on Wednesday with Brian. All right. Thanks a lot for joining.